Howdy folks, John here from rchelicopterfun.com.
Welcome to OpenTX.
That's right, we're going to be talking a little bit about OpenTX. A reoccurring question I get asked is, what radio should I purchase? Should I get a Radiomaster TX16S, a Jumper T18 or T12, perhaps an FrSky Tyrannus, maybe something from FlySky, any of these brands that have OpenTX based radios. Now these questions can come from beginners who are just looking to make their first decent computerized radio purchase, right up to seasoned pilots who have been flying for years with more traditional, menu-driven computerized radios. They've seen and heard about these OpenTX radios. They know how powerful they are, how affordable they are, and they want to check them out. Now, my initial response to these type of questions usually has nothing to do with the radio brand or the model number, but it's a follow-up question for these folks, and that is, are they ready for the learning curve involved in OpenTX? Are they even aware of it? A lot of people find OpenTX very confusing and challenging. I know people who have purchased OpenTX radios and got rid of them because they were so frustrated with it. I was almost one of those people myself when I purchased my FrSky Horus back in 2016. I thought I had made a huge mistake for the first 2 weeks I had it, but I finally figured it out, and that's what I wanted to share in this video, is what helped me the most when I was getting into OpenTX and made the biggest impact for me. And it was basically two websites. I'm going to link to them below in the description, and we'll go over them really quickly. There's also a third, which we'll talk about. Now, if you're not even sure what OpenTX is, I guess we should cover that. It's just the operating system these radios use, just like Android on your phone or Windows or Mac on your computer. I liken OpenTX more to Linux though, because it is open source. And that's primarily why these radios are so affordable. They didn't have to spend any money developing their own operating system. They're just using an existing TX operating system. Like I said, it's a super powerful system, so configurable, so customizable. But in there lies the problem with it. As the old engineering adage goes, complexity hampers execution. And before you can even consider one of these radios, I strongly recommend checking these sites out that we're going to go over, so you at least have an idea of what you're going to get yourself into before you put your money down on the table. You may find out if it looks really quite simple to you, you're not going to have any problem. A lot of people are like that, but for others, it's just completely alien. So the first site we're going to look at is, of course, the main one, which is OpenTX.org. Be you newbie or experienced OpenTX user, OpenTX.org is likely going to be your most visited website. Here is where you can get the kind of 10,000 foot view of what OpenTX is if you're new to it. It'll tell you a little bit about the firmware, TX Companion, which is a program you load onto your computer. You can update the firmware on your radio with Companion. You can also do virtual programming with it or program a radio with Companion. I don't use Companion that much at all. Maybe in the early days with the little LCD display radios like the Tyrannus, it helped because you'd see more information on the screen. But with today's, the big color displays on a lot of these radios, I just program right through the radio. I find it easier, but you can play around with it. OpenTX Sound, I've never used it. It's just a way to record sound files for your radios. But here is where all your different update versions of OpenTX are going to be. And that's one thing with any of these computerized radios. Updating the firmware is pretty much a must-do if you want to stay current so you can use new hardware down the line. This is really important if you've got a multi-protocol radio, because you need to be running generally fairly recent OpenTX firmware to work with the most recent multi-protocol firmware. And they've also got a donate button here, and I highly encourage everyone to donate to OpenTX if you use it. I generally donate a few bucks once a year because that helps them keep developing and keep the product current, and goes a long way. There's a manual on here. This never helped me at all, but for sure take a look at that if you want. Documents, there wasn't really anything in here when I was getting into OpenTX that really helped. There we go back to a donation. Downloads, this just shows all the different versions of firmware. And you'll notice when you click on all these firmware versions to download, it tells you what the improvements were over the previous version. You know, here it's showing the latest version 2.3.12. It's now got support for the production version of the Jumper T-Lite and Radiomaster T8 Pro. So that's its main difference over the previous 2.311 version. Feedback, you can leave feedback for them. Issues, this is where you would report issues to the OpenTX developers on GitHub. Links, this is where I found my second most useful tool. In fact, most useful for actually understanding OpenTX, which is OpenTX University, which we will get to in a bit. And if you're curious what radios are supported by OpenTX, this radio listing gives you everything. As you can see, the latest radio that's going to be supported in the next release is the FlySky Nirvana. And then it just goes through all the different radios, as well as hardware that runs OpenTX operating system. So if you're curious what radios run OpenTX, this is what you can look at. So we're going to go back to links. The most useful tool, as far as I'm concerned, when I got into OpenTX is OpenTX University. Now this is based on the old Tyrannus, so it is a little dated as far as the radios that you're going to see in the images and what they're talking about here. But the operating system is the same, so it hasn't changed at all as far as its function. And this was what changed everything pretty much overnight for me. After digesting and going through all these tutorials, it made a lot more sense to me. And I, of course, am pretty much 100% helicopter flyer. So in the undergraduates courses here, if you go to non-fixed wing and helicopter, this is where it's going to show you all the different setup procedures for collective pitch helicopters. And all my collective pitch helicopter, my base foundation for all of them is right off of OpenTX University's tutorials here on helicopters. And as you can see, they just showed the Tyrannus screen in their examples, but really there's nothing different if you've got a Radiomaster TX16S, something with a color screen. The color screen just shows more information. Maybe if there's enough interest, if you want to leave a comment below if you want me to go through my actual OpenTX helicopter setup, I'll show you how to set up a helicopter from scratch. But again, it's just based on what's available here. The main reason OpenTX University was a big game changer for me in understanding all this is because it's written out. Now, we all learn differently and absorb information differently. I had tried watching some tutorial videos with OpenTX at the beginning. There were basically none for helicopter, but even the basics I wasn't getting. I couldn't follow along with more abstract concepts like this. I like reading about it. One, I can digest it at my own speed. If I don't understand something, I can easily just go back a sentence or two, reread it until it finally gets through my thick skull. And it just lays everything out in an organized manner, in a sequence. And if I mess something up, I can just easily reference back. That was the game changer for me. And then the third site is the multi-module site. Now, a lot of OpenTX radios now have built-in multi-protocol modules, and that's largely why they're so popular now, is because you can fly so many different models with the one radio. It shows what modules are available, how they work, firmware updates again. They've got to donate. Again, they're an open source development team, nonprofit. And then this is where you get all your firmware downloads. I had done a video on updating firmware to multi-protocol. I will link to it up in the little card doodad or below in the description if you're curious how to do this as well. But it's really simple. Those are the 3 sites that helped my OpenTX learning curve tremendously. All the information I've ever needed to find is in those 3 locations. I don't have to waste a bunch of time searching for segmented and conflicting information. It's all there. Now, I'm not saying they're going to help everyone to the same extent, but you should at least be aware of them if you're brand new to OpenTX. Now, I don't proclaim to be an OpenTX expert by any stretch, but with the help of those 3 sites, I've been able to get all my OpenTX radios to do exactly what I want them to do. And like most people who get comfortable with OpenTX after using it for several years now, I just love it. I can't even imagine going back to a more traditional menu-based computerized radio system. OpenTX is just so versatile and it's so fun. And that's what the hobby's all about. Quickly to conclude the video here, just wanted to show you something that arrived in the mail yesterday. I'll be doing a full review on this shortly. This is Eachines OpenTX radio, their TX16S, very similar to Radio Masters, but we'll be having a deep look at it. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you next time. Happy flights.